All right, everybody. I am at Bendt Distilling in Louisville, Texas, with Natasha DeHart.
Hello.
For a whiskey conversation. And it is a lovely Thursday morning, and we're going to have whiskey. Don't know about you. Morning whiskey's good. First of all, I know you have a busy day, so thank you.
All good. Thank you.
Now, Bendt I've gotten to know Natasha over, I don't know, last year and a half, 2 years, really well. We spend a lot of time together on phone calls and things with the Texas Whiskey Association. So it's always a joy to get to come hang out with her. And yeah, I'm hoping y'all get a little bit of that today. All right. Bendt Distilling, how long y'all been in business?
We started it was actually more like 13 years ago, but became official 12 years ago.
Okay, so that would have been what, 2011?
No, 2012.
2012, yep. Okay.
2012.
And how did you get into whiskey? The whiskey business. I guess not necessarily whiskey itself, but the business.
Yeah, so we loved drinking whiskey, obviously, because we all do. And I would say our gateway whiskey was Maker's.
Solid.
Yes, a nice wheated. Mm-hmm. And that was what we always drank when we lived in Germany. So Ryan and I loved whiskey. We came back from Germany and lived in Dallas before the craft beer boom. Couldn't find good German beer. So started making it at home.
There we go. Kind
of learned a bit about fermentation.
Important step in whiskey making.
Yes, important step. And then Ryan, through a house guest, ran into an old Marine friend who was making rum in his garage. So he was distilling. Yes, he was distilling. We were making beer, and it just kind of all fell together, and we decided to give it a shot.
Very cool. And so, all right. So y'all been making whiskey here for 12 years?
12 years, legally.
Yeah, and you are making it grain to glass, so the entire process happens in this facility that we're at.
It does.
And you're using Texas-grown grains too, right?
We are, whenever possible. So
not always possible. Texas is finicky with some of them. Right.
So whenever possible, we do use 100% Texas grain. That's our goal, but our priority will always be on quality. So there was a year, I think probably 4 or 5 years ago, where we couldn't get Texas rye. The Texas rye crop just was not good. So we had to source from Oklahoma. And one of our goals is also to keep our footprint as small as possible. And for us, in a lot of cases, Oklahoma is as close as some of the Texas farms. So we were forced for multiple reasons to get some Oklahoma rye a few years back.
It happens, and sustainability is a big deal nowadays. So doing what you can, doing your part.
Yeah.
All right, so speaking of that, how many products do y'all make? Well, I know y'all make a ton of things, from creams to y'all have special releases, but the core product lineup.
Yeah, so we are primarily a whiskey distillery. That's what we do. We do make some other products for the bar. So we make rum and gin and vodka and all the things, and those are just very tiny experimental batches. We really just do those for our in-house guests.
And for the reason that being is because a distillery in Texas cannot serve something that they do not make. So therefore, if you want to have a gin martini, they would have to make gin. You want a vodka cocktail, they've got to make vodka. So why you see a lot of craft distilleries in Texas making all of these other spirits is so that they can have them in their tasting room and offer a little something to everybody. And y'all are no different in that sense, trying to create a well-rounded experience in your tasting room.
Yeah, absolutely. So although whiskey is our primary spirit, we do make some others. Anything that we have in the market, though, is going to be whiskey-based.
Okay.
Anything sold in stores. So we have 2 different, I would say, lines. We've got our Bendt line. So anything made under the Bendt label is going to be a blend. Whether it's a blend of cream, sugar, and bourbon, or a blend of whiskeys.
Is Bendt No. 5 the only blended whiskey y'all have out right now under the Bendt label? Today.
Yes. Okay. More coming on that in the next 6 months.
All right. So now, what is Bendt No. 5?
So Bendt No. 5 is a blend of these 4 whiskeys and light whiskey.
All right. So it is a blend of 5 different styles of whiskey, hence why it's called number 5. And so you got bourbon, malt, wheat, rye, and light whiskey.
Exactly.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, I saw something that it is coming out soon.
Yes, I
think the
know.
Coming whiskey people,
I know.
they steal the labels
They
and put
do.
it out there.
They do.
So, all right. So that's bit number 5, and then the unbent series is the individual components unblended.
Absolutely. So these are all going to be a bit different from the version of these whiskeys that go into Bendt. The Bendt whiskeys are generally about 3 years old. So when we started, they were a little younger, of course. Like everything, it evolves. We're now up to some of the whiskeys that are going into Bendt number 5 are up to 4 years old. Some of them could be considered bottled and bond. They would be 4 to 5 years old. But most of them, we say the youngest now is going to be 3. So the difference in what you're going to see in Bendt and what you're going to see in the unbent line is each one of the unbent releases is going to be a bottled and bond release. So the Bottled and Bond Act, of course, means 100 proof, made by the same distiller in a single season, aged in a new, not even a new oak container, that's straight, aged for a minimum of 4 years. And so it's basically just a governmental quality stamp.
Oh, absolutely. So bottled and bond is one of the hardest things from a criteria perspective, because you have to meet all the criteria to be whiskey, and then you have to do the additional steps that Natasha just mentioned to get that bottled and bond assurance and label. And it really started off as an assurance to make sure that you were drinking something that was untampered with, because back in 1897, there was a lot of things that were tampered with.
You go blind. And
a lot of people got sick, and it just, not good. Not good. All right, so how would you describe Bendt 5? Or, how would you describe the blend?
So the blend is intended to be drank however you want to drink it. It is unpretentious. It's not going to be for necessarily the whiskey geeks. I still drink it on a weeknight in a glass with nothing in it. I would call it my weeknight whiskey.
All right, and so it comes in at
83.
83 proof.
Yes.
So it sounds like you would call it more of an entry whiskey?
Absolutely. So it's going to be something that I would compare to like a Jameson, a Crown. Drink it neat, drink it in a cocktail.
All right.
I don't get emotional about it. Anyone who puts ice in certain whiskeys, you get that, like, people start itching and shaking. This is not that whiskey. Yeah. So we believe drink any whiskey however you want to drink it.
Well, we should.
If you want to put Pappy in Coke, that's your choice. This one, I would encourage you. Put it in a cocktail. I like it neat, but I like most whiskey neat. So
I find that whatever
drink it how you want.
If you're in the business, a lot of people, that's kind of our preference. It just, you're used to tasting it out of a barrel when you're blending and doing things, you're drinking it neat. And so, it's hard to get over that sometimes.
Yeah.
You try it another way and it's just kind of but okay, never mind. Let's just give it to me neat.
Yeah.
All right.
This is a good breakfast whiskey.
Oh,
this would be a good whiskey to like lead you into your lunch.
Well, but we're going to skip that.
Okay.
But let's start with whiskey.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
I would usually recommend starting with the one that's going to be easiest on your palate. And for me, that would probably be the malt or the wheat. But honestly, we can go in this order.
Okay. Let's start with the bourbon.
All right, let's do it.
All right, and so talk to us about the bourbon. It is bottled and bond.
Yep.
So all the criteria. Mash bill?
Oh gosh, you would ask. Well, I have all the whiskey sitting in front of me. So it is. It's going to be Texas corn, malted barley, and it is a rye mash bill. So it's got a little bit of that rye spice. And
would you consider it a high rye bourbon?
Not a high rye bourbon. It's under 20%.
Okay.
So
That's funny. I use 20% as my.
That's kind of my gauge.
Level. Yeah. If it's over 20%, it's
you
high
get
rye.
to 25 and you can really pick out those rye notes. You get to 49 and you're basically at a rye.
All right, lots of red fruit notes. I love that. Almost like a dark cherry.
Yeah.
And I love that in bourbon. I don't get a lot of it in other bourbons, but when I do find it, I tend to glob onto that.
Like a sweet stone fruit. I mean, that might be a good breakfast whiskey too.
That was a great breakfast whiskey. Are you kidding me? Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
So you do get that rye spice, but it's not overwhelming.
It lingers.
It does. But a lot of, for me, rye puts a lot of black pepper on the sides and tip of my tongue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very minor.
Yeah.
But you really get the sweetness and those fruit notes for me. All right.
It doesn't have a lingering sweetness for me. That's, I don't necessarily enjoy something that feels like it's going to stick with me and raise my blood sugar.
See, it's not like a syrupy sweet. It's just kind of I don't know. I ate something and now it's just, I know that I ate something sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Not a syrupy, like hang out in my mouth, cling to me.
I didn't just drink maple syrup.
I'd say well done. I mean,
Thanks.
You know, if you like bourbon.
You know.
If you don't, then I wouldn't try it.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to go on to the malt. Was that right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. And so I was looking at this, and it is a straight malt whiskey, not a single malt. And the reason being, it is malted barley and wheat.
So we did, we signed the agreement with the American Single Malt Whiskey Commission probably, oh my gosh, 7 years ago. And that was, I'm not able to quote it, but that was basically agreeing that we would not release anything that was American single malt whiskey from that point on that was not 100% malted barley.
So the American Single Malt Commission is an organization working towards creating an official designation for single malt in the United States, because right now there's not one. And that process would be, it has to be 100% malted barley distilled from a single location, not bottled less than 80 proof, and kind of basically following the rules that Scotland does, except for the minimal aging period, and obviously made in America.
Right.
And so, and for single malt producers, this is really important, because right now there are single malts in the United States that are not 100% malted barley. And from a consumer perspective, you hear single malt, and then what you get, and you learn that it's not 100% malted barley. Doesn't mean you still shouldn't drink it if you like it, but it's trying to keep some consistency for the industry and the consumer, so that when you see single malt, you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah.
And so I like that. I didn't realize y'all signed that, but I do. I like what they're doing.
I do too.
I like that you called it straight malt because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like the addition of the wheat in there.
I do too. I think it brings a little bit of a creaminess that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. Wheat for me is kind of an earthy, almost a minty. Mm-hmm. So my wife, Michelle, grows sweet mint, so I can do mint juleps. About the only time we use it, but there is something different about going and cultivating it from the garden with your hands in the dirt versus getting it at the store. Yeah. And it really is that for me. And it's the mint's very faint, but that combined with the cereal from the barley, a little honey in there.
This is one of my favorites. So you're not supposed to pick a favorite kid, but
don't worry, I'm going to ask you after we're done.
Oh, and I'll have a different answer.
I know.
It depends on the day.
Well, so when I was having the whiskey conversation I had with John Evans at Wilson Valley, I asked him this question, and his response was, depends on which way the wind blows. Mm-hmm. And valid. Wasn't the answer I was hoping for, but valid. All right, so this is also bottled in bond, 100 proof, all of the things. Now, what I also like about these, getting to a designation of single malt is it opens up this world for malt whiskeys. And the idea that not everything has to be a single malt if you're using malt.
Yeah.
And the addition of playing around with mash bills of barley and, wheat, or there's one that I have at home that's barley and rye. And it is also really good. And they're like an 80-20. So it's 80% barley and 20% rye. And it's just
super
enough
unique
in there. It's flavorful. And if you're not a single malt fan, these malt whiskeys can be really good because they're adding additional flavors. A lot of the reasons I've heard people say they don't like single malts is just too cereal. It's too,
or too, peaty.
Yeah.
Even the ones that are not intentionally peaty.
They still associate that with it. And so the addition of like a wheat in this gives it a whole nother mouthfeel, texture, but flavor profile that just because you don't like single malts, I would encourage you to try things that are malt whiskeys just because of that flavoring.
Absolutely. I love that we have a couple distilleries in Texas now that they're just going gung-ho on malt.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe, is it Swift? I don't know much about them.
Nobody does.
Okay.
They don't talk to a lot of people, my understanding.
Oh, darn. Okay.
I've had a couple of things, and now they do have theirs labeled as single malt.
Okay.
It's been years since I've had it.
Yeah, same.
But like Real Spirits, they're doing a lot of malt whiskey, and they're not all single malts. Their bottle and bond that they release is a combination. Now he did one that's primarily malt, and then one that has malt and wheat, and then one that's malt and rye that he all blended together to create this thing. And it's
awesome. Phenomenal
flavor. I would call it your bourbon drinker's malt because of that rye and that wheat in there. Spirit of Texas Distillery out of Pflugerville, their single malt is 80% malt and 20% rye.
Okay.
And they do call theirs a single malt, which
I think it's still a process.
It is.
So I don't.
No, and I
don't feel like anyone's probably intentionally doing anything deceptive at this point. It's just, it's a new process. I admire the direction it's going because absolutely. I think that it's clarifying some of the marketing for consumers. But we've got some pretty cool experimental stuff going on the malt side. We've done some pilots with the guys at Colorado Malting.
Okay.
It's two brothers, and they're so fun. So
I love experimentation.
It's been a blast. So they have done some cold smoke experimenting with us. So
okay.
Yeah, we'll see how it all comes out. When you say
cold smoke, what kind of wood?
I think we did a couple different varieties. So one of the things that we have tried, and I believe we tried this with Tex Malt, started years ago, but it was using our own barrels and using our own barrels to smoke our malt. So it is a bourbon barrel smoked malt.
So I saw on social media that Tex Malt, working with Still Austin, was putting the grains in one of their used barrels to do let it barrel age. Now, I didn't necessarily read through the entire description. I probably should have.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I like this. Why not give it a try? I mean, they have this funnel, and they're just pouring this barley or this grain into the.
We do the same
barrel.
thing with coffee beans in the back.
Right.
We can swap notes about the absolute bitch it is to get all that out.
Oh, I have no doubt. I don't want to be there for cleaning day.
No.
But why not experiment with it? It could turn out terrible, but until you try it, you just don't know. And I think people forget about that sometimes when it comes to craft. And that is, yes, you have multiple jobs. You're trying to create a consistent quality product that you can get out into the market that people can know is reliable. You can make enough of it that it can actually get to all the stores. But yet pushing the envelope and experimenting. And, I can't speak for other states, but I will say I feel Texas, from everything I hear, pushes that envelope far more than most craft industries, other states. Now, there are distilleries in every state, but the exception does not break the rule.
Yeah.
And what y'all are doing, and every time I took them back, oh yeah, we put this back, but it was like 3 years ago. And I'm like, you had this idea 3 years ago? It just came to me. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
One of the things that we heard a few years ago was that somebody was doing something with, we don't know how anyone's supposed to say it, but triticale or triticale. And heard that, they were the only distillery in Texas. And it was like, we got a barrel that's been sitting back there full of 100% triticale, and we've got some bourbon experiments that we've run with triticale. And so I think all of us are probably doing some really cool stuff and just have all of these, we call it our spice rack. So we're creating a cool spice rack in the back. We love blending, and so we've got this really cool spice rack that we can now pull from and blend.
And that is awesome.
Great, cool stuff.
Also, great breakfast whiskey.
Yeah, this is going to turn into lunch whiskey before you know it.
That's okay. Okay. All right, so
man.
now we're going wheat whiskey.
Yes.
All right. And is it 100% wheat?
No.
All right.
No, it's basically the malt with the swapped.
So wheat and then malted barley.
More wheat than barley.
All right, I'm glad we're trying these back side to side then, or back to back, because it'll be nice to taste that difference on what the swapping of the majority grain is. Now, in order to be wheat whiskey, malt whiskey, rye whiskey, bourbon, they all kind of follow the same rules.
Yes.
And bourbon has to be, grain recipe is what I'm talking about, has to be at least 51% corn. To be a malt whiskey, it has to be at least 51% malt. To be a wheat whiskey, it has to be at least 51% wheat. And to be a rye whiskey, it has to be at least 51% rye. Our federal government did not get real creative when establishing the rules to be called whiskey.
Keep it simple.
Which, yes, there is something to be said for keeping it simple, especially with our government.
Yeah, because the, the beverage alcohol manual is not simple. The only thing that's simple is that they copied and pasted on the straight whiskeys. So.
Oh my God, so different.
Yeah, isn't it?
It's like
I love this one.
Creamsicle. Like almost like a flat A&W.
Yeah, it does have a little bit of the sarsaparilla.
I love that. I've had a bottle of this, and so it's not like the first time I've tasted it. But honestly, this might be the first time that I've truly just picked up that note.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was my first favorite unbent. I've bounced around, but
it's not the best breakfast whiskey though.
No. It's warmer than you expect it to be.
It really is. And I really do feel that's coming from the malt on the back end, because that wheat. So for me, on the initial palate, it's kind of this cool, mellow, fruity kind of like that sarsaparilla flavor, and then it just kind of picks up heat there on the back end.
Yeah, it's very peppery, and there's a lasting warmth and spice on that mid palate that just sticks with you.
Now, Texas is one of the only states I'm aware of that actually has more wheat whiskey. I mean, I don't know about another state, but Lone Elm, they're doing a wheat whiskey. Banner, it makes a wheat whiskey, and that's Lone Elm. All they make is wheat whiskey. Banner, all they make is wheat whiskey. But y'all have now a wheat. It might be the only three in the state, but I don't hear about wheat whiskey coming from. I mean, obviously they exist because Lone Elm had won world's best wheat whiskey, and so there's got to be some from other states. I don't hear a lot about them, and
we don't either. And we love. I mean, obviously, our kind of first whiskey that we fell in love with was Maker's. That was, I mean, in the 90s, but still.
Yeah. This could actually. I mean, I could see a bourbon lover going, "Oh, that's a really nice bourbon." We
have that. So this is where I think that these two match pretty well. If you're a bourbon drinker and you want something just slightly different, this is probably going to be a good option for you. You've always got people who love malt know they love malt. And people who love rye know they love rye. But this is kind of the wild card.
And, well, not a lot of people even know what to expect because wheat whiskey's this. What do you mean it's a wheat whiskey? What does that mean? What does that taste like? Well, I will tell you this tastes far different than Lone Elm, and it tastes different than Banner.
Yeah.
And so there's not enough of them out there to really give you a clear answer on what wheat whiskey tastes like, other than everybody has their own markers for what wheat provides to a whiskey. And for me, it's kind of an earthy mellowness, like I said, a little mint earlier. And I get a lot of that on that front part of the palate, but then that barley comes in.
It evolves into spice.
Yeah. And whereas Lone Elm is 95% wheat and 5% barley, so you get a lot more of that wheat. And for me, it drinks a lot more like a bourbon than it does this, which I'm guessing has less wheat in it and more barley.
Definitely compared to theirs.
And then I don't know Banner's ratio, so
I have no idea.
All right. It was nice. And now, rye. So here's what I've learned about ryes. People either love them or they hate them. There's not a lot of in between. I mean, every now and then you find somebody they're okay. But it is one of the most hated or loved whiskeys in whiskey lineup or whatever.
I think ours could bridge this gap. For a rye, it's a fairly low rye. So it's super approachable.
Well, we need an approachable rye. And look, we have a lot of distilleries making rye, and they're doing them at different, and they all have their own take on it. Ranger Creek, it's technically a whiskey from a rye mash bill because they age it in their used bourbon barrels. And it creates this light, but very green grass, green apple. I get a lot of green apple out of theirs, and I love that because it's soft and it's not what people expect that from a harsh bite in the rye. Then you have Milam and Green, who's doing a port finish on theirs, which port, that sweet wine, like it curbs and takes away some of that pepper spice that you get with rye. And so we have some distilleries doing some really cool things with rye, and this one's no exception to that. No,
completely agree. This is, you haven't asked me yet, but this is currently my favorite child.
Well, we're going to get onto that then. Okay, but this is, you said it's low rye content.
It is.
So obviously it's at least 51%. And then is it just malted barley or is it other grains?
This is when I feel like a total failure. I'm failing my favorite child.
I have to read labels all the time. To be
continued. I'll have to look.
Okay, well, I'll get the details and share that at some point. But so if you're not a rye fan, and she's saying she thinks this could bridge the gap, it is because of that lower rye content. So you're not getting so much of that pepper, that spice, that bite, as I've heard some people say. Okay, so in all of the Unbent series, I picked up on some fruit notes. Primarily in these two, there was more kind of that red stone fruit, and then the wheat, it was kind of more that sarsaparilla, but there were still some undertones of fruit. This one, there's less of the fruit, but there's still some in there. What would you attribute that to, like getting that in all across your lineup?
I think it has to be the conditions in which it's aged. Yes, there's some common ingredients, but everything that you're looking at has been aged exactly the same. Completely different recipes in some cases, but if you're getting something that across the board, regardless of the recipe, it's going to be with the process, obviously.
Are you using the same yeast?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So we have some experimental yeast that we run on some products. On all of these, I would have to check because we have evolved over the years. So I think in many cases, it's going to depend on the age as well.
Because I've talking with other distillers, the fermentation process can bring out some of those esters during the fermentation process.
For sure.
So could it be your fermentation?
It could be. We've also changed fermentation vessels and the mash size. So, the volume of our tanks has changed drastically over the years. So, where these were probably made in significantly smaller batches, we now have thousands of gallons that are being fermented together. So, I think there's a number of things that could have changed. We have, like I said, we've evolved the yeast that we use over the years. It's not necessarily the kind of yeast, but our source and the manufacturer has changed. Yeah, it's a possibility. I think potentially, yes, fermentation, but I think aging is going to be the one thing that across the board is the same for all of our whiskeys. And they're all aged in the same warehouse. Are you using
the same cooperage for all of your stuff?
Yes.
Or are you experimenting with different cooperages?
Experimenting, but nothing that you're going to see in this lineup right now.
All right. Okay, well, that's good to know, because it is kind of curious whenever, and now we did geek out a little bit nerdy, so for those that didn't like that, fast forward. Too late for you, but I find those questions interesting because Texas is getting old enough now, and some of the distilleries are getting old enough that I think we're starting to get some house flavors.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing more notable than a Balcones whiskey. It doesn't matter what they make, and I love most of them. It's hard not to tell that it's Balcones.
Yeah, and I think for most of us, you can put any of my whiskeys in a lineup with 15 other whiskeys, and I can tell you without even bringing it to my lips what it is.
Just based on how it smells.
Absolutely.
Because you're picking up on a house character and flavor.
We have a flavor. So I think it's probably everything in our process contributes to that. And I think that it will certainly evolve over the years as well, because we are growing and changing the process and changing the equipment. And we have, even over the years, we've changed our barrels a bit. So we all went through the barrel shortage. You got what barrels you could. So when we look back on those times, those are whiskeys that will be still to come out. And we will potentially notice some differentiation. Right. Oh, and switching to Texas grain. I mean, that just happened 5 or 6 years ago.
And so you're just really starting to see those come out and
absolutely.
What the difference is. And the conversation around Texas grain versus grain sourced, that's a whole nother conversation. I mean, people talk about terroir in wine, and it really does have to do with where the grapes are grown and things like that. I do believe that makes a difference in whiskey as well, where the grains are grown. But usually in whiskey, when we're talking about terroir, we're talking about the aging and the climate in where it ages. Also very valid and very important. Things age differently here in Louisville than they do in Houston or San Antonio. And we're not old enough yet that we're starting to see regions from a flavor perspective, and maybe we never will with technology and things that we're in shipping and what we can do. But now you start adding Texas-grown grains to it. Now, the funny thing about that is going to be very interesting, because I think aging is still going to play into it, is a lot of the grains are grown in the Panhandle. Yeah. It's suited for the climate. Look, I grew up in the Panhandle. I get it. But if distillers that are using Texas-grown grains, and they're getting them from the same farms,
but they're aged in different regions.
But they're aged in different regions, we will start to see it. In theory, we should see a distinct flavor coming out of Texas from the Texas-grown grains, but then variances based on the aging climates.
See the differences in the same grains that are used for whiskeys in different regions.
And absolutely. That's a theory and a hypothesis. It could turn out to be completely wrong.
I don't think it will be.
And I think we're decades away from actually understanding that. I mean,
I don't know for decades, because the rate that whiskeys age in Texas is intense.
It is. But with most distillers trying to figure out how they slow down aging by using larger custom-made barrels, thicker staves, what are the combination of? And that's whenever they're starting using Texas grains. So if they're really trying to let them get to a 6-7 year, then, you know, I mean, we're not quite 20 years into this industry.
Yeah.
I think Garrison and Balcony started around the same time, 2007, 2008. So we're not even 20 years into this.
No, and we've had people ask, will you come out, you know, when the time comes, will you be coming out with like a 10, 15, 20-year whiskey? I don't see that. Unless we start to climate control, and we don't want that.
No,
then, you know,
it takes away from the essence of the land.
Absolutely. So I think, if anything, we're leaning into this. I don't see us experimenting with many different sizes of barrels. It's cost prohibitive, and we feel like 53 gallons, there's a reason that it works. And it's worked very well for us. We like the flavor of our whiskey, but I do feel like we're going to have to lean into that Texas terroir and just understand that a 10-year whiskey, you're going to have to be comfortable with a really high price point, because we're going to get nothing out of that barrel.
And I mean, I think the only way you can truly get there is if you aged in some new charred oak, transferred to a second fill barrel, and then maybe even transferred to a third or fourth fill barrel, to where there's less of that oak in there,
just
transferring it to even if they're all bourbon barrels, but it's a fourth used bourbon barrel, so you're not getting as much of the oak and tannin, because that's the problem that I see with really old whiskey in Texas, is it becomes too tannicky, very oaky. It's almost like chewing on a piece of bark.
Yeah, and I think you get some of that from the finishes as well. So some of like the wine finishes, but
that French oak will really add to that.
Yeah, and I think for us, we're going to lean in and probably just try to hit that sweet spot between 5 and 7 years. That seems to be where
you're at.
We're the most personally enjoying our whiskeys at 5 to 6 years.
Well,
5 to 7.
Only release stuff you like.
We do.
I know, which is why I like what you release. All right. So now, you've already picked your favorite. If that whiskey was a song, what would it be?
Oh, hell. I don't know. Something spicy.
Like, what kind of spicy are we talking?
I mean, all the spicy.
That can go a lot of different directions.
I know, inappropriately.
My first thought, inappropriately.
Yes, it's spicy. I will have to revisit that. Yes.
Okay, we'll revisit the song, but it's not a stage name. We're going to go with something nicer. All right. You have a lot of tough days, long days.
Yes.
But you and Ryan have tough days with kids and things going on.
Yeah, juggling.
Yeah. And when you sat down to drink whiskey, do you ever put music on? Is that kind of a thing?
We have music playing around the clock at our house. We have a speaker in every room, including our kids.
So what if you're long day, you're getting your unbent straight rye whiskey, what music are you putting on to relax?
Probably Leon Bridges radio.
Nice call. I do love me some Leon Bridges.
I think that's, if we just hit the button on the speaker, that's usually what just comes on.
All right. And you've already talked about you drink your whiskey neat.
Right.
Mostly. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to drink a cocktail, what is your go-to cocktail?
I do not drink cocktails at home. I drink whiskey at home. By the time I get home, I do not want to make a cocktail.
It's time consuming.
It is, which is why we make a ready-made old-fashioned, which Ryan drinks at home. I do not. I just drink whiskey neat. If I come to a bar and I'm ordering something, I would generally order probably a Sazerac or
Sazerac.
It's my favorite. So, or an old-fashioned, a well-made old-fashioned I could do, usually made with rye.
Which is the problem with cocktails in general, whiskey cocktails. Other cocktails you can get pretty consistent across the board, but like especially an old-fashioned and a Sazerac,
well-made.
And a Sazerac, it's also, I found, hit or miss.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily know what you're getting when you order it, which is why I order whiskey neat a lot of times, because if I know they make a good old-fashioned, I will drink an old-fashioned. If they make a good Sazerac, I will order that. I'm in. But if I'm not unsure, it's whiskey neat, because it's really hard to screw that up. And I say it's hard. It's not impossible. I went to a Chili's once, and they did actually screw that up.
That's how you start your stories. I went to a Chili's once, and
yeah, I try not to go, but
I ordered a whiskey neat.
I did, and then it came with ice in it.
Oh shoot!
No, actually, I ordered whiskey neat, and it came with. It wasn't even an old fashioned, but they put simple syrup and ice in it.
Oh hell!
And so I took a drink of it, and I tasted it. Obviously, the first time I smelled it, and was like, this isn't right, but okay. Next time I was like, okay, I just want whiskey. Like, so you want a shot? I was like, no.
Just say yes.
I was like,
just say
I know.
Yes.
I learned the
Just
hard
say
way.
yes.
I learned the hard way. And I was like, no, I wanted it in a glass.
Yeah.
I just wanted, and then third time's a charm. I was like, I'll take a shot of whatever insert whiskey that I drank, and I don't remember.
Can you also put it in a slightly larger glass?
Actually, I didn't even
bring me a glass on the side.
I didn't even go that far. I just took the shot glass and sipped on it as I would, and she kept giving me funny looks because I wasn't shooting it. Anyways, not the point. Off topic. Okay. In your mind, to you, what makes a good whiskey? Or what makes a whiskey good?
Wow.
I actually like the first preference. What makes a good whiskey?
What makes a good whiskey? I think it needs to be enjoyable. You should not make a face before it even makes it into your mouth. So, and I understand that that's very subjective, and it's going to be up to interpretation based on every person. But I shouldn't smell things like tire and rubber, and there's just some things that I feel like they don't have a place in whiskey. And if you're making that face and you're questioning, is this a good idea to put this in my body? And you can't look at the ingredients, obviously, but if you think, are tires an ingredient in this? It's probably not a good whiskey. So obviously that is subjective, and that's going to be an opinion. Because I've seen people drink things that I don't necessarily agree would be good whiskeys, but I think it has to be approachable. Can't hurt you. It can't hurt your face before you even try it. And yeah, you should be able to sip it neat. You shouldn't have to mix it.
I like that answer. And so I think that a couple valid points that you put in there is, and advice even in there is, but one, you've seen a lot of people like whiskeys. You're like, I don't know why you do. And I see a lot of whiskeys I don't personally like win awards all over.
Absolutely.
And I believe everybody should take awards with a grain of salt. Hell, even the festivals awards, take it with a grain of salt. Use it as a guide, not as an all be all, like this is the whatever. Use it as a guide, as a way to, I'm trying to get into whiskey, or I'm trying to get into a specific style, and these people liked it, I'm going to give it a try. It's a guide, nothing more. And so I think that's valid, but also I think there's advice in there that if you're just getting into whiskey and it makes you cringe when you smell it, maybe try a different one first. Now, if all whiskeys make you cringe, somewhere you've got to take the plunge, because it is an acquired taste. And you do need to try some things before you will figure out what it is you like. And you may like the taste, but not the smell. But I think it's a good
You got to figure that out. I think
it's a good warning.
The example that I would use is when you're pregnant, you have a heightened sense of smell, taste, and from what I've read, this is evolutionary, and it's keeping you from eating things that would hurt the fetus, or putting things anywhere near your body that could hurt the baby. And so kind of going along with that, I would say trust your instincts. If you smell something and you think, I can't do this, trust your instincts. So,
Heard it from her.
yeah, so I trust what my nose and my palate tell me. And I think that it may be completely different from what the next person does, but they should also trust their instincts. And just because I don't like it doesn't make it a bad whiskey. Everybody has their own individual palates, but
And that's a valid point. We're talking about things we like and whiskeys we like, but I get asked all the time, friends in the neighborhood come over, spouses of friends come over, and obviously I have a lot of whiskey at the house. And they're like, well, what should I drink? I'm like, what do you like? And they're like, well, no, I want to know what you like. I was like, what I like is irrelevant.
I like,
it's like
so many different whiskeys.
I go, not only do I like a lot of different things, I like them. I like odd, unique. I like rare. Like when I say rare, most of them are single barrel releases from some of the Texas distillers that I covet and I like because I know I can't get it again.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what I like is actually irrelevant because I have a far different palate than you do. And it takes a little bit to get them to understand that. Once they do, then they tell me what they normally drink. I'm like, great. Okay, we got something. It's not that, but I got something for you.
Yeah.
And so that is an interesting topic because, yeah, I get asked and I'm like, what I like doesn't matter. It's really about what you like. All right. To you, what makes Texas whiskey unique?
Ooh, I think there's a lot to be said for our climate. So there's a flavor profile, for better or worse, that people associate with Texas whiskey. I think it's evolving. I think that when people in the past would talk about, oh, it's got that, I think I've heard Texas funk. It's got that Texas funk. And it's like, I know what they're talking about, but I think even that has evolved. I think that Texas whiskey in general is young when you compare it to your grandfather's whiskey that's made in Kentucky, Tennessee, Indiana. And I think that we will continue to see that evolve. And that Texas funk, I think, has now grown into something that's really cool. What used to be a funk is now a more refined, creative version of what it was 5 to 10 years ago. And I think you can pick it up, but I think it's all about that terroir and our climate down here. So I think our whiskeys age at, probably twice the rate of a more temperate climate. And that absolutely makes a massive difference in the flavor profile.
I would agree 100%. And the last thing we have is a temperate climate.
Oh, God. We joked about the year that we had, I think it was 91 day, and we had the freeze, and it was at the football stadium, the debacle.
That year, yes.
Yes.
And the entire state froze and earth broke down.
Yes. And our whiskeys aged like crazy.
Like basically
it was
they stopped aging because
because it was
froze.
Like hot and cold and hot and cold, and so it was some serious barrel work happening in there. But I think that is reflected in the end result, and it's freaking cool now. What used to be funky is now evolved into something that's, I think, more unique than funk.
I agree, and I love that. I think that is a phenomenal answer, and I think it shows the magic of whiskey. I mean, it's as good as y'all are, and the distilleries in Texas, we're less than 20 years in. Y'all are still figuring it out. Y'all are still experimenting, and you're trying things, and yet you're still you've got a good understanding of certain things. There's still a certain kind of a hope for the right outcome on certain things. And that is just, there's the mystery and the magic, and there's a there's almost a bit of a romance with whiskey in the sense of, you know, you're doing this and you're aging it, and not as much here, but like in Scotland and things like that, there are going to be distillers that will never taste their final product.
Yeah.
Because they were doing it, they go off and retire, and it's 20 years before it released. They may or may not like get to taste it, and there's just, yeah, it's just really freaking cool.
Yeah.
Whiskey is, I keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it, but whiskey is so much more than a drink. It is many things to many people. For me, it's community. It's friendships. It is born so many friendships that I have lost count at this point over the last almost 8 years in and out of distilleries. And I'm thankful that I'm getting to sit here with one.
I think I've known you now for probably 5 or 10 years. And in the past year, I would say it's gone from like, I could call you and ask you questions about something or other to you're a close friend now. And I value that. And truly, there's been so many good friendships developed over this industry and this drink.
Oh, I would agree. And if you're not finding friends over whiskey, then you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
And come find us. We will help you find friends over whiskey, because it truly is about that.
We won't tell you there's a wrong whiskey, but we'll tell you you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, yeah. You can drink whatever whiskey you want.
If you failed to make friends
If you failed to make friends over whiskey, then you're doing it wrong. You can drink whatever whiskey you want and still make friends. You can be drinking different whiskey than your friends and still make friends.
And we'll accept you even if you drink vodka.
Do we?
I don't know. Maybe I might have to take
gin, yes. Vodka, I'm a little, I don't know.
A little more wary.
Yeah, I'm a little more wary. But nonetheless, everybody's welcome. Come, get bent. Louisville, Texas. Thank you, Natasha.
Cheers. Thank you.
Till next time, cheers.